Please help support the channel by visiting our Amazon store, affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and today is the 1st of November 2017. Now, if you're asking yourself, why do things look a little bit different? Well, that has everything to do with the fact that I'm trying something new with the channel. I've been doing a lot more live streaming of multiple stories on my main channel, MundaneChats. I found the format to be more refreshing, more fun, more interactive, and I want to turn it into a streaming thing where I would do a show. Don't know if it would be daily or every other day, so on and so forth, but this is generally the format I want to roll with, and I figured I would try it out for a little bit here and see if it would if it flows and gels with the audience. I love talking movies. I like doing standalone videos sometimes, but I also feel like I put out a lot of content, and I get asked repeatedly to consolidate, and so that's what we're going to do here. So just so you guys know, this is what's going on with everything for $3 Theater going forward. I think it's going to be a good mixture of things, and I hope you guys are on board with it. So first things first, taking a look here just at the thumbnail, clearly Superman, that's been a thing, because Slash Film was reporting that Henry Cavill concedes that the DCEU has had some problems. And a lot of people out there are not going to argue with this, period. A lot of people out there are going to be like, but Batman v Superman was a horrible waste of time. The theatrical cut, absolutely. The extended cut was wonderful in my opinion. Still had some problems in the third act, but ultimately just a solid film. And Man of Steel was one of my top 5 films of 2013, and I still say that 4 years later, and that's not going away. I love Man of Steel. I want to see Man of Steel 2. Suicide Squad was a fun movie, but it definitely had its issues. Wonder Woman was a good movie, albeit in some respects a great movie, but it still had some issues. And yes, the DCEU has had some problems. So it says here that it has proven surprisingly difficult for some fans to admit that the DCEU has had some problems creating their own cinematic universe, but now a surprising supporter of the idea has surfaced, Superman himself, Henry Cavill. In a candid new interview, Cavill concedes that the DCEU has made some mistakes, and he hopes that Wonder Woman is the first step towards remedying them. That's interesting. Or you've got one of the leading men of this franchise, right, coming out and saying, we've had some missteps. No one at Marvel would ever say that publicly. Because really, what missteps would there have been? Incredible Hulk comes to mind, Iron Man 2 comes to mind, the first and second Thor maybe, but other than that, everything's been pretty much top-notch. It's been very homogenized, and they know what they're doing. DCEU, on the other hand, was trying to be the anti-Marvel for quite some time, the dark, gritty take on these films with these characters that people were just like, whoa, 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 man, we don't want that. We want more like Richard Donner type stuff. And Wonder Woman was, in fact, one of those films that really kind of bucked the system. And that, I think, has a lot to do with Patty Jenkins and a lot to do with Zack Snyder not being 100% in control of that. And I do feel that the DCEU will work better without Zack Snyder being in charge, because I do feel he likes to take on these dark, gritty characters. And that's not something you can really do with Superman for too long. Sure, ground him in reality in the first film, and then from there bring back the hope and the love of humanity, because that's a lot of what he's dealing with. However, the deconstruction of the characters I do happen to enjoy quite a bit, and I will staunchly defend that, but that being said, I am looking more forward to a fun outing. But here's what he says. He says, even if Marvel didn't exist, we'd struggle. There was a style that DC, were going for, an attempt to be different and look at things from a slightly different perspective, which hasn't necessarily worked. Yes, it has made money, but it has not been a critical success. It hasn't given everyone that sensation which superheroes should give the viewer. Yeah, sure. I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I liked it. Because it was different than Marvel. And I love Marvel movies. I'm going to see Thor tomorrow night. My tickets are purchased. My tickets are purchased for Justice League as well. I definitely feel like there is a lot of good within this franchise. And I want to see what they do with it going forward. Now, he does go on to talk about Wonder Woman being enjoyable. And he thinks that might have been the turning point, saying here, I think it's a wonderful time for the female hero. It is a perfect setting in social politics right now. We need it. We want that perspective. And Wonder Woman has struck at the ideal time and has become a phenomenal success, which is fantastic. Any success within the superhero universe, especially within the DC universe, is wonderful because I want to keep telling the Superman story. Selfishly, that works for me. And I get that. Wonder Woman was definitely the turning point for the DCEU, or the DCCU now. They don't want to call it extended or expanded, whatever you want to call it. They want to call it like the cinematic or whatever. No one's not going to call it the DCEU. Let's just be realistic here. All right, it's just never not going to be called that. But he does go on to say here that I feel like now the right mistakes have been made and they haven't been pandered to, and we can start telling the stories the way they need to be told. It is even better to come back from a mistake or stylistic error into the correct vein, because it will make them seem that much stronger. Wonder Woman was a first step in the right direction. And again, he's not wrong there. A lot of people have levied a lot of hatred on Zack Snyder. I do feel a lot of it was just hatred of Zack Snyder, and that's just manifested itself. Don't get me wrong, the movies, while I find them to be good, I can see why others do not. I can see why others don't enjoy them. And I can see why Wonder Woman was, in fact, the turning point. Wonder Woman is the type of movie that you look at and you go like, yeah, this is, hope and love and optimism, which is basically something that at least 2/3 of the Holy Trinity in DC kind of stand for. And we haven't gotten that with Man of Steel, but then Man of Steel also needed to go through what it was like to become human, to understand the fragility of human life, which is in essence his entire journey in Man of Steel, and that continued on into Batman v Superman, where he was trying to understand the motives of Batman and trying to work with him instead of against him. And I felt like that was a good dichotomy of the characters and a good deconstruction of the characters. And I've been really wanting to see what's going to happen with Justice League, even though now, there's the rumors that there's all the rumors, that they reshot most of the film. And speaking of reshooting most of the film, that's what we're hearing now about Ron Howard, saying here that he nearly shot all of Solo for twice the budget. Everything that's happened with the Han Solo movie, including its god-awful title, Solo, A Star Wars Story, is stupid. It just makes me imagine a red Solo cup, and that's what a lot of people have made the joke about. It's a dumb title. They can still go back and change it. I don't think they're going to, but you can clearly tell that this is going to be a one-off movie, and it's one thing that they're never going to go back to again. And also, they're going to be far more restrictive in terms of which directors they bring into the mix. Hence why J.J. Abrams is directing Episode 9 after Colin Trevorrow had a falling out with Kathleen Kennedy as well. So it says here that Ron Howard's work on Solo: A Star Wars Story reportedly involved reshooting just about the entire film, which may have doubled the tentpole budget. I don't know, would calling it a tentpole be a right term though? It's not a tentpole because it's not meant, yes, it's part of a larger franchise, but it's not meant to be its own thing. Like I guarantee you, though, they're going to have the same contracts that the actors in Rogue One did, which they opened up for sequels. However, explain to me how they're going to do a sequel to Rogue One. I mean, granted, movie magic is a thing, and that can happen, but still, it's I don't know if I'd call it a tentpole. Anyway, over the summer, Lucasfilm shocked the entertainment industry when they fired the original Solo directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller after 4 months of filming due to creative differences, which makes sense given the rumors of what we heard about them making it too slapstick and too much like 21 Jump Street and not like kind of an Indiana Jones-esque type action adventure with some comedy elements thrown in, whereas Ron Howard is a very good filmmaker in terms of making like biopics and really keeping to a formula. So I think he was definitely the best person to come in to fix it. So shortly after, they hired Oscar winner Howard to see the project across the finish line, and he's been the man in charge ever since, boarding the Millennium Falcon back in June. The director recently wrapped up production, which is 7 months to go until its theatrical release. During his time filming, Howard served as the damage control department by posting fun pictures from behind the scenes, offering his social media followers a small taste of what was going on. And I'm not going to lie, that was one of the smartest marketing moves anyone could have done at Lucasfilm. People love behind the scenes stuff, right? They love to see a glimpse into what's going on. And so the photos were guaranteed entirely vetted by the marketing department. Everything was entirely vetted by a social media team. And then, an assistant took Ron Howard's phone, uploaded the photo, posted it to Instagram and Twitter, and then was basically trying to they're building up hype that way. What they're doing by that is they're showing everything's fine. It was entirely a damage control move. It was smart damage control move, but it was a damage control move nonetheless. These are people that are very good at what they do, and they very much, are going to make everyone believe that everything is fine. hence why they wanted us to see all the behind the scenes stuff, all the cast photos and everything else. That was like, oh, everyone's smiling, everyone happy. There's nothing wrong here. Everything is fine in Denmark. Nothing is rotten. But now we're hearing that, you know, he may have reshot most of the film. While those were successful in changing the conversation to the content of the film itself, some couldn't help but realize Howard wasn't simply finishing what Lord and Miller started. As filming went on for a while, it became apparent there was considerable retooling going on. Now, any issues at who will receive director credit are a thing of the past. Yeah, so it says here that from inside sources, Howard reshot nearly all of Solo for possibly twice the budget. The estimate that at least 80% of the spinoff was reshot under Howard's watch, which comes as a bit of a shock since there were allegedly a few weeks left in principal photography when Lord and Miller were dismissed. The duo's footage was said to be very usable at the time, but apparently Lucasfilm is opting to leaving it all in the vault, which, again, this entirely makes sense. This is exactly what Lucas is going to do. Kathleen Kennedy needs this to win, right? She needs to prove to everyone in Hollywood that she's got what it takes. And I do believe Kathleen Kennedy does, which is one of the reasons why I think that she is locking it down. She's locking down directors who will follow her vision, those who won't go outside of the lines too much, and that way they won't challenge her. Because apparently that's kind of, I think, what's happening now, is the writer's room of Star Wars is kind of dictating where everything's going in terms of books and in terms of like the shorts, like Forces of Destiny short films, Rebels, how that's concluding, and everything else. And so they don't want anyone who's going to question the narrative, because this is a billion upon billion dollar film franchise and they don't want to mess with it. And I get that. I do get that. But, you know, Star Wars comes out in just a couple months, and or not even just like a month and a half. We're talking 6 weeks until its release. I'm counting down the days till it comes out, mostly because my daughter will be born on the same day. So that's kind of in my calendar right now. But speaking of going over to the movie theaters and them having problems, or the movie coming out in theaters are not too happy about Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and some are actually refusing to show the film. Now, what you have to understand, when I talk about this particular story, I will be using my knowledge from the 14 years I spent working in movie theaters. And so I find some of the response to this to be interesting, mostly because it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me. It goes on to say, while Disney and Lucasfilm are preparing to unleash Star Wars: The Last Jedi in theaters on December 15th, some theater owners aren't feeling the force, specifically the demands Disney has in place for screenings and their cut of the profits. Although most moviegoers in larger markets with bigger theaters won't have to worry about missing out on the next chapter of the Star Wars saga, fans in smaller cities might get burned. Yeah, that happened before with Episode 1. And Episode 2. I used to work at a drive-in movie theater in San Diego, California. I started in 2001. In 2002, when Attack of the Clones was coming out, we wanted it. Everyone wanted it. All of us who worked there wanted it. We wanted to watch Star Wars until the end of freaking time. And we didn't get it. We didn't get it at all because Lucas wanted 90%, and he wanted there to be in our main theater. We had 2 screens. He wanted to be in our main screen for, I do believe it was 8 weeks. 8 or 12 weeks. It was a long time. It was like the entire summer. He wanted it in the main auditorium. And they also never got Phantom Menace because Lucas had wanted there to be a new sound system installed at a drive-in theater. Like it was meant to be for a new sound system for multiple theaters, but us being a drive-in, that wasn't ever taken into consideration. Now Lucas did lighten up a little bit for Revenge of the Sith, and we ended up getting that when it came out, and we did very well with it. And I enjoyed watching it multiple times. Might be one of the reasons why I tolerate that as much as I do. But smaller theaters, I get why. Yeah, I get why. This is not anything that's uncommon. Movie companies want a large cut, and what it is they have a booker, they have a booking agent, and that booking agent is meant to negotiate with the theaters. They are the middleman. They are the in between. Movie studio comes back and says, okay, we'll give you this movie for X amount of time at X percentage. Okay, and then the theater comes back and they say, let's do X amount of time, and then let's go with this percentage. And maybe we'll take another movie of yours at a later date for us. We'll go get one of your older movies that is dying in theaters, and we'll throw some money your way as a result of that. Like, they wheel and deal. If smaller theaters aren't doing that, then yeah, they run into some problems. According to the Wall Street Journal, the massive success of Star Wars and Marvel franchises has emboldened Disney to make more aggressive demands with theaters regarding The Last Jedi. In strict terms, some owners are calling the most onerous they've ever seen. Disney is requiring 65% of ticket sales and a stipulation that the film be screened in the largest auditorium for at least 5 weeks. 65% is not bad. It's not. Unless things have changed in the last couple of years, man, 65% it's like a good number. You know, usually they try to argue for more, but we were paying, with the first Harry Potter and Warner Brothers, we were paying 78%. And that was a pretty average number in 2001 to give to the theater. And we were only charging $6 a head. Maybe that's why we're paying larger amounts. I got no idea. But like 65% of ticket sales, that's pretty average. Usually studios, from my understanding, from everything I've been told from my bosses, have always asked for more. And the stipulation that it plays in the largest auditorium for at least 5 weeks makes sense. But it's coming out in December. There's really nothing else coming out until February. So putting it in the largest auditorium for 5 weeks is really not that big of a deal. The movie is expected to earn $2+ billion. So it's kind of like, it's worth the risk. This is in contrast to the 64% of profits in 4-week runs for previous Star Wars films. Oh, they're asking for a percentage more. Oh, geez. You know, if a theater fails to keep their end of the deal, they're subject to a 5% penalty, making Disney's cut 70%. It may not seem like a huge deal to some, but there are a couple things to keep in mind. Yeah, and this is I get this whole thing here, this defense of the smaller theaters, and I'm totally on the side of the smaller theaters here. But it's also like, I'm looking at this number like this is not anything that's not common. It's being treated as it's something uncommon, but ultimately it doesn't feel that way. Saying here that first, some small theaters, those in rural areas, may have 2 or 3 screens, so dedicating one entirely to The Last Jedi for 5 weeks isn't exactly reasonable. No, during that time of year, it is. Movie theaters traditionally tend to drop off September, October, January, February. Those are the worst months. Now February has big blockbuster releases, which kind of tend to kick off the spring season, which leads then into the summer season. So January is essentially a dead time. So you're talking December 15th through the 3rd week of January. It's really not that big of a deal. And if the movie is as good as people are saying it is, as the rumors are saying, then I'm pretty sure it's going to pull in some people. The other thing is Star Wars doesn't own December. It's a big month for new film releases, including Jumanji, The Greatest Showman, also The Disaster Artist, Phantom Thread, and Molly's Game, to name a few. Okay, come on, let's be fair here. Jumanji has got like basically the biggest shot at being a competitor in some respects to Star Wars. But other than that, The Greatest Showman, like it's, you know, Hugh Jackman as what, P.T. Barnum or something. Yeah, it's an awards movie coming out on Christmas. It might do well. It might also go the way of Saving Mr. Banks. The Disaster Artist looks phenomenal. I can't wait to see it. But again, it's going to be one that a lot of people out there who don't know what The Room is are probably not going to go see it because they don't get the joke. You know, those who have seen The Room and know the backstory of The Room are going to go see it. The Phantom Thread and Molly's Game. I don't know about Phantom Thread. Molly's Game looks interesting. It's an Aaron Sorkin, you know, his directorial debut could be good. But at the same time, I really don't know. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. If these theaters are refusing to run it, I think ultimately that's going to hurt them. I understand why they want to. They want to stand up to Disney and be like, no, we won't be taken advantage of. But at the same time, with the way things are going in terms of movie theaters right now, and the moviegoers aren't going as often, or they are in some respects, but not in all respects, maybe it's in their best interest to kind of, you know, just take this one, because a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. All right. Now, jumping over into kind of industry drama news. It says here that Jared Leto says he wasn't going to play Hugh Hefner in Ratner's now canceled film. If you don't know what's going on with that, Brett Ratner has been accused by Olivia Munn and a few other women of sexual harassment. And so as a result of this, things have kind of gotten a little bit murky for Brett Ratner and his Rat Pack production company, which tends to work very heavily with Warner Brothers. But it was announced a while back that Oscar winner Jared Leto here was supposed to be playing Hugh Hefner in the biopic. He has come out and said Jared Leto is not and was not attached to a Brett Ratner directed Hugh Hefner film, nor will he be working with him in the future. Earlier reports were incorrect and not confirmed by his representatives. When it comes to Jared Leto, nothing is confirmed by anybody, so it could have easily been believed. Now, it does go to say here that production halting decision on the film is due to the swirling accusations from 6 different women that Ratner sexually harassed them. Playboy did issue a quote on the subject saying here directly, "We are deeply troubled to learn about the accusations against Brett Ratner. We find this kind of behavior completely unacceptable. We are putting all further development of our projects with Rat Pack Entertainment on hold until we are able to further or to review the situation further." Now, the way things are going with Hollywood at the moment, what makes you have to kind of understand here that the way things are going with Hollywood at the moment, these kind of accusations are going to keep coming out, and they're going to keep derailing projects, canceling projects, because everyone is going to be acting from a knee-jerk, perspective. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation. Hollywood is a very interesting and dark place at times, and that those secrets, those skeletons, are going to be pulled out of the closet. Now, whether or not they're factual or they are made up, we won't know in many, if not most cases. People are going to be making claims, and as those claims come out, because right now we see ourselves in a safety by number situation, or safety in number situation, this is what we're going to see. And I know that may not be what a lot of people out there want to hear, and I understand that, I get that. But that is the relative truth of the matter. So it's unfortunate that this is where we find ourselves. It's also unfortunate that people have been put in these positions, because no one ever deserves sexual abuse or sexual harassment, period. But at the same time, nobody does deserve false accusations, and those do need to be investigated, and they do need to be found to have merit, and there needs to be evidence, and they also need to go to the police. And that, again, is the other half of the conversation that I feel that not a lot of people are talking about, is that particular angle of it, which is unfortunate. But finally today, I want to jump over to this piece of drama, juicy bit of drama coming out of the Fast and Furious franchise, saying here that Tyrese Gibson threatens to quit Fast and Furious 9 if The Rock returns. Now, this was a drama I thought was kind of like played out. I thought it was done. I mean, I knew they were going back and forth. There was banter back and forth, but I thought these guys were straight up just kind of like having fun with each other. I guess there's some trouble in paradise when it comes to these particular films right now. And this is where you have ego and money coming into play. Saying here, Tyrese Gibson has threatened to quit the Fast and Furious franchise amidst his ongoing feud with co-star Dwayne Johnson. Gibson posted on Instagram on Wednesday telling loyal fans and loved ones from our Fast universe that he won't appear in Fast 9 if Johnson is involved. "I'm sorry to announce that if Dwayne is in Fast 9, there will be no more Roman Pierce. You mess with family and my daughter's survival, I mess with yours." Gibson captioned a selfie of him, Johnson, and Vin Diesel. Gibson is currently in a legal battle with his ex-wife over their daughter. Now, I don't know how those two are, related necessarily. But maybe it's the fact that he's talking about money here, I guess. I don't know. He's been in these movies. You figure he would have made millions of dollars off these movies. So it says here that this okay, so he does here say full. I want to get the full quote here. It says, "Hello world, hello loyal fans and loved ones from our Fast universe. I'm sorry to announce that if Dwayne is in Fast 9, there will be no more Roman Pierce. You mess with family and my daughter's survival, I mess with yours. Close your eyes, dude, you're a clown. Candy ass bitch made all my real one men on integrity. My real ones out here stand up. Folks at GP to the gym." I don't know what he's talking about here. I really don't know. Saying here that this latest rant comes after Gibson criticized Johnson on Instagram in October when Universal Pictures announced the 9th Fast installment was being pushed back a year to accommodate a spin-off around Johnson and Jason Statham's character. So yeah, it's insane. So here's the deal. Here's my take on this one. Tyrese just needs to shut the hell up. He just needs to shut the hell up at this point. As much as I think he's possibly in the right here in terms of being upset about The Rock getting a spinoff with, Hobbs is like, as much as I like the character of Hobbs, I felt like the last couple movies, because of how popular The Rock is, that they've given him a lot more time, and the character is not the most fleshed out in the world, and it makes it kind of like, like the whole scene in Fast 8 when he's a coach for his daughter's soccer team. And they're out there doing a dance and a chant and stuff. I mean, it was like, I get it. It's about family, but that was such a tacked on scene that made no sense whatsoever. I know it was meant to soften his character and whatnot, but he's meant to be a previous villain or antagonist who becomes a protagonist and part of the family, but he's part of Dom's family. Dom is the lead, and they've done a lot more with Hobbs than they've done with Dominic Toretto, I would say overall, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, Fast 8 had a lot to do with Dominic and his entire storyline, but I do get where Tyrese is coming from. And he said before that him and Ludacris have, in fact, you know, turned down spinoff roles because they wanted to do this whole thing as a family. And that, I think, is where things are currently at with him right now. This is where Vin Diesel is going to have to come on in and lay the smackdown. But if they had to choose between Roman Pierce and Hobbs, between Tyrese Gibson and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, there is no question you're gonna be out Roman. All right, like they're gonna kill you off in the beginning and replace you with Han. Although I have a feeling Han's coming back anyway. But no, that's the truth of it though. If he doesn't calm his shit, essentially, he's not gonna have a franchise to go back to for the final 2 films. And that's going to be entirely on him. This is where, you know, you put up a fight behind the scenes. You try to make it more about the family and you're fighting for everybody, but you got to keep this petty shit off social media because it just makes you look like a bit of an asshole. Anyway, that wraps up today's episode of 3 Buck Theater. I hope you guys liked the format. This was more of an off-the-cuff test, but I wanted to give it a shot. I actually quite enjoy it. It allows me to go through the 5 stories pretty easily, and that way we get one long video instead of a whole bunch of short ones, which are more of a pain in the ass to produce, to be honest with you guys. And I do, again, want to know your guys' thoughts, so let me know in the comments. My name, of course, is Matt Jarbo. This has been 3 Buck Theater. If you guys haven't already, thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to support it, Patreon really does help out. Join the Facebook group below, where there's a lot more conversation going on there. And also, see you guys later, and have yourself a good one.